For decades, France called Africa its partner, but many Africans called it something else: control, dependency, neo-colonialism. Now, after years of rising anti-French sentiment, military expulsions, broken alliances, and growing Pan-African consciousness, France is trying to reconcile with Africa. But the real question is, can reconciliation happen without accountability? To understand today's tension, we must understand history. France once controlled vast parts of Africa: Senegal, Mali, Niger, Burkina Faso, Côte d'Ivoire, Chad, Cameroon, and many more. Even after independence, many Africans argued that true freedom never came. Why? Because France maintained influence through military bases, political alliances, economic control, the CFA franc system, and strategic resource access. This system became known as France-Afrique. To critics, it was colonialism wearing a modern suit. But something changed in recent years. Across West Africa, anger began to rise. Countries like Mali, Burkina Faso, Niger began removing French troops and distancing themselves from Paris. Anadolu Ajansı. Young Africans increasingly questioned, why are foreign troops still here? Why are African resources still benefiting Europe more than Africans? Why does France still wield so much influence decades after independence? The old relationship was collapsing. French President Emmanuel Macron saw the danger. France's influence in Africa was shrinking. Russia, China, Turkey, and Gulf states were gaining ground. So Macron began promoting what he called a new partnership. Equal to equal relations, less military dominance, more economic cooperation, youth engagement, cultural reconciliation. France started withdrawing troops, speaking about mutual respect, returning looted African artifacts, investing in African business partnerships. On the surface, it looked like change, but many Africans remained skeptical. Because reconciliation is not just about speeches, it is about trust. And trust is difficult when history is unresolved. Many Africans still remember colonial exploitation, assassinations of African leaders, support for dictatorships, economic dependency, military interventions. To many Pan-Africanists, France is not simply misunderstood. It is seen as a former empire struggling to maintain influence. Then came comments that made tensions even worse. Macron accused some African leaders of being ungrateful for French military intervention in the Sahel. The backlash was immediate. Leaders and citizens across Africa described the comments as arrogant, paternalistic, disrespectful. Officials in Senegal and Chad openly criticized Macron's tone. For many Africans, the remarks revealed something deeper: that despite the language of partnership, parts of the old colonial mindset still remained. But this relationship is not one-sided. France needs Africa too. Africa offers strategic minerals, uranium, oil and gas, rare earth materials, growing markets, and the world's youngest population. At a time when global power is shifting, Africa has become geopolitically critical. France understands this. That is why Macron has increasingly focused on trade, investment, green energy, AI partnerships, infrastructure cooperation. This is not charity, it is strategy. But Africa today is not the Africa of the 1960s. There is a new consciousness rising. African youth are asking hard questions. Pan-Africanism is returning. Across social media and political movements, many Africans now demand sovereignty, dignity, economic independence, African-led solutions. This changing mindset is forcing France to adapt. Not because France suddenly became generous, but because Africa is becoming harder to control. One of the clearest signs of change is France's shift away from traditional Francophone strongholds. Macron increasingly visits Kenya, South Africa, Angola, and other non-Francophone countries. Why? Because the old France-Afrique model is weakening. France is trying to reinvent itself as a business partner, an investor, a diplomatic ally, instead of a controlling power. But the question remains, can a former empire truly become an equal partner? Real reconciliation cannot happen without honesty. It requires acknowledging colonial exploitation, stolen wealth, political manipulation, and the long-term damage caused by Empire France, has taken some symbolic steps, returning African artifacts, recognizing certain colonial crimes, changing military strategy, but many Africans believe symbolism is not enough. They want structural change. But Africa must also learn from this moment, because no foreign power, whether France, China, Russia, or America, will develop Africa for Africans. That responsibility belongs to Africans themselves. Pan-African thinkers like Kwame Nkrumah, Thomas Sankara, Julius Nyerere warned long ago, political independence without economic independence is incomplete. France seeks reconciliation with Africa, but Africa is no longer approaching the table from weakness. The balance is changing. The old Africa asked for recognition. The new Africa demands respect. And perhaps for the first time in centuries, Africa is beginning to negotiate with the world on its own terms. What do you think? Can France truly rebuild trust with Africa? Or is this simply a new version of old influence? Comment below. Like this video. Subscribe for more Pan-African discussions. Because Africa's future